Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here today. I'll make sure that I'm here every year after this. I think we missed a year, but it's just such important information that really affects us all. When we're talking about the Port of Brownsville, it's really the Valley's port. When this was designed, the first talks about a Port of Brownsville started in the late 1800s. So then by late 1930s, the Port of Brownsville was created. But if you look at some of the historical documentation, you'll see some pictures from the past where people from McAllen would come down in a boat and say, it's our port too. Okay. So it is all of our port. For us, it's very important that all of us take advantage of the Port of Brownsville. There is so much that can happen there. And we would like everybody to be able to come down and see what we can do for you and your business. A lot of times people don't realize we have a port, or they don't understand our capacity, our capabilities. Let's keep in mind, the Port of Brownsville is the deepest deep water port for northern Mexico and on the border. It's the only port. It is very unique in its in its geographic location, and it definitely gives a lot of continuity and a lot of access to Mexico. With that in mind, the Port of Brownsville overall, 90% of what we do at the Port of Brownsville is we export to Mexico. Okay, so a lot of the businesses here, Rick was talking about hybriding businesses. For example, a lot of the Mexico industry and all that right now is looking to hybrid their operations. For example, in layman terms, put the mothership over there, but have hybrid operations over here. So definitely there's going to be a footprint on both sides of the border. As we're moving along in this new world of tariffs and wake up every day, turn on the news and see what's new, okay, because it seems that's how fast the world is moving today. But there's no doubt that no matter how fast the world is moving and the tariff situation is going, the Valley is getting a lot more interest. There's a lot of interest, and really how that has come about is I think it's been a long time secret. As other parts of the country built up and everybody else, got the benefits of advanced manufacturing and manufacturing around the world, we kind of got overlooked. I don't know why we got overlooked, but there's no doubt right now we have been recognized, and tier one, tier two, large organizations around the world are wanting to come here right now and establish their business. They've been very impressed, and there's no doubt as I go through my PowerPoint presentation here, live and die by PowerPoint. I like them. That kind of keep me on track, but nevertheless, I like adding the ad lib here, which says there's no doubt when I'm talking to the tier one industries and the industries that are wanting to locate to the port or the Rio Grande Valley, they're absolutely impressed with what we have to offer. And I think that, all organizations like STMA and the myriad of them that go around the Valley, all of us together are really working very well to tell the same story. When we're talking about the story is, we don't know when someone comes down and says, hey, we're looking at Brownsville, we're looking at McAllen, we're looking at Harlingen. We don't know how many NDAs they got going on. But, what I've seen has been very surprising and very pleasing is all of us are pretty much saying the same thing. Okay, so there's continuity in the message out there right now. And that continuity comes from get-togethers like this, which help us get our information together so that we can work as one unified force to bring in the economic development for the Valley. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start off in the presentation. 1936, okay? 1936, the port opened up. Now, the Port of Brownsville, you can look at it in many different ways. We can hybrid, we can turn it into so many different operations. But nevertheless, when you go back to the old newspaper articles in the early 1900s, late 1800s, up to when it opened, you look at it and you realize what it was supposed to do. The Port of Brownsville was to connect the Valley to the rest of the world. And with that in mind, that should be our focus as we move forward. Now, it would be easy for the Port of Brownsville to make itself for example, an energy port. We could come in, stack both sides of the channel with energy operations up and down the channel. There's jobs in it, but not as many. But no, we really pride ourselves on our break bulk industry, what we provide for the break bulk industry, providing feedstock, providing whatever is needed for manufacturing. Okay, so with that in mind, you sometimes when you want to look at where you want to go, you have to look at what it was originally created for. And really, the people who thought about this 100 years ago, they were right on, and I think we should follow suit with that and make sure that we continue, because that's what provides the good jobs the sustainable jobs that the community needs. Okay, jobs. Our commitment, jobs, cultivate sustainable workforce opportunities and develop human capital. This is probably the number one commitment we have. There is no doubt that when somebody comes to the Port of Brownsville and says, hey, I want to take up a large piece of acreage and I want to create this industry, and the first question we ask is we don't even ask how much the investment is. We ask how many jobs are going to be provided. How many jobs are going to be provided? Okay. And then you'll have someone come in and say, well, we're going to invest $300 million. Well, how many jobs are you going to provide? 20 jobs. Okay. How many acres you want? 600. No way. No way. For the land and for the investment and for the jobs. And then we want to know what they're going to pay. Okay. We don't want anybody coming down to take advantage of or come up with this ideal that this is a cheap labor market. Let's not undercut ourselves. If we're doing the advanced manufacturing, we are doing what they need us to do. They will pay us correctly. And that's something that the commission has been very proud of. And when we look and when we say, hey, yes, we're going to allow this company to come in, or we're going to further this because it's going to be good for the public and it's going to be good for the community. Community, promote education initiatives, improve quality of life in the Rio Grande Valley. That's it. We all know that economics has a lot to do with quality of life. The statistics show, an area that's rich in economic development and opportunity tends to be a better community. There's that old saying out there that all decisions are made by economics. And, I truthfully believe that. So with that in mind, I think the Port of Brownsville, we're right on. Our focus is right on. Environment, preserve the regional ecosystem, natural resources for present and future generations. It's very easy for anybody to come in and say, you know what, when you're building industry and you're doing all these great things for humans and for people to get jobs and all that, to say, well, you don't care about the environment. Well, that's not true. Every decision that the Port of Brownsville makes, the environmental impact is taken seriously. There's no doubt that the corporate social responsibility that we have, along with the people that we bring in, has just been marvelous. What I'm noticing out there is it's not so much that you needed a law to say, hey, you need to protect the environment. What I'm seeing is this is front loaded into the proposition for the company or the industry that's wanting to come in. Because really, this comes down to consumer demand. The consumers are demanding that corporations right now act responsibly and do their business in a way that protect the environment. So this is a good situation for Brownsville. For the valley. Not only are we bringing industry in, but we're already bringing in industry in that's already taken in consideration the environmental impact they could have, and mitigating that before we even ask them to do so. So that's a good place to be in. Industry, support existing industries and foster economic growth by connecting the region with global markets. And that goes back to that original statement. When you go back and you read the old newspapers, connect us to global markets. Here's the Port of Brownsville. This is the boundaries of the Port of Brownsville. 40,000 acres. We are the largest land-owning port in the United States. Only deep water seaport directly on the U.S. and Mexico border. Large and growing petroleum break bulk trades. Now look at that second part there, break bulk trades. A lot of ports are getting away from break bulk. It's not very sexy, okay? Break bulk, that's where you're going to bring in raw materials. This is not containerized. This is very, very, very hard work, but it's very essential if you want manufacturing in your region. A lot of ports have said, hey, we don't worry about that. We want container type business along with just hydrocarbon or bringing in energy at that point. But we're very, very happy to say that we pride ourselves on our break bulk capabilities. And the people for which we do business with around the world have commended us for being able to do so. 10,000 plus local jobs, local employees. Now, 10,000 local jobs. When we talk about that there, that's kind of an interesting number there. When we're talking about, that's what we refer to, the port is divided into areas. What we refer to as the turning basin, which is everything directly on the channel. And then you have everything around the channel. If you look here, these are businesses that would be up and down the channel. And then you got the areas out here and out here and out here. Now, I'm not including the 4,000 employees that are working on the Next Decade site right now. Right now, 4,000 people are working at the Next Decade site. And guess what? This is the great news. 73% of them are from the region. 73% of the people who are working on the Rio Grande Valley Next Decade LNG site have been harvested locally. That is amazing. I had dinner a couple nights ago, and there's Matt Schatzman. He's the CEO of Next Decade. And I asked him, I said, in hindsight, when you signed the agreement with the Port of Brownsville, did you think that you were going to have this much local talent? He says, no, it surprised us. In the contract, they have to guarantee 30%. 30% local hires. They're at 73. That's been consistent through the entirety of the project, from when they started at 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and actually the number is actually edging up. That's fantastic. So when tier one companies come down and say, you know what, you might have a labor force problem. Not really. We have areas that we need to improve. There's no doubt, just like any community, that we're going to have to add talents as we move along. But nevertheless, the Next Decade site and Bechtel, which is the largest construction company in the world, the oldest in the United States, has said that this Rio Grande has been their best project ever because of the local talent. So that we owe a lot to our people. Home port of SpaceX. If you look over here, SpaceX is right there. Right there. It looks further away, but it's really right on our border. So SpaceX, we're a big part of SpaceX. A lot of their modules, when you see them rockets and they're actually on the side of the launch pads and everything, all them modules were brought in through the Port of Brownsville. So the Port of Brownsville is very essential to SpaceX and their operation as they move forward. Access to nationwide transportation. Interstate 69, 69C, I-2, 550, I-69, BRG, Union Pacific, BNSF, CPKC, Gulf Intercoastal Coastal Waterway, Marine Highway Corridors, M10, M69, pipeline connectivity to U.S. and Mexico. The Intercoastal Waterway. How many of us know about the Intercoastal Waterway? Coastal, where it was dredged out all the way up from Brownsville all the way up to, I believe, Maine. That's for everybody to take advantage and be able to have the depth and the draft they need to bring goods down through the Gulf and around the waterways of the United States. But how many of you know that the Intercoastal Waterway goes all the way up into Pennsylvania too? Okay. It goes all the way up through the Mississippi. It all goes all the way up in there. The waterways are very important. Now, when we think of the Port of Brownsville, we think, okay, large ships coming in. But we do get a lot of barge traffic that comes in from them areas around the country. And we have been working very hard to capture more of that business from the Midwest and bring it down here. Global connectivity. Someone mentioned the other day, and now I have to say it instead of them changing the PowerPoint. We also have South Korea too, so it's not pointed out on there. But this is the global connectivity, and that's changing every day. As more people see that, as more organizations see that the Port of Brownsville is a great place to bring their product and to have efficient logistics to be able to transport it into Mexico. Primary commodities: steel, liquid cargo, and project cargo. Just to give you an example, with the LNG project, we've had 92 shipments of project cargo this year. What project cargo is? These are actually apparatuses and large pieces of the facilities that'll be brought in by barge. A lot of times these things are built somewhere else. They're brought in and they're put together almost like a Lego. Okay, so you're looking at that. That's the modular manufacturing system is growing very fast. And for a lot of these companies, having a modular setup is a lot quicker and a lot easier for them to do. And I'm sure there's going to be some price savings in there. Liquid cargo: steel slabs, plates, wire rod, hot, cold roll steel, beams, pipes, pig iron, ingots, chrome ore. Petroleum, including lubricants, gasoline, jet fuel, diesel, number 6, oil, naphtha, vacuum gas oils via pipeline, natural gas line. And project cargo, wind energy components and space industry components. And we should add on there LNG components. Cargo tonnage, fiscal year 2024. We had a great year last year. Cargo moves for 2024, 17.4 million metric tons of liquid bulk, 10 million in break bulk. Dry bulk, 634,000 metric tons. If you look at the difference, the bottom graph there, between 23 and 24, that's a pretty big jump. So we're definitely proud that the tonnage is going up and we're being able to service more people. Multimodal logistics. Last year, 95,000 rail car movements. Just kind of give you an example, in 2015, we had 30,000. So we're at 90,000 right now. We're looking to break 100,000 this year, if not this year, next year. The tariff year did have some impacts on what's going on around the port, and I'll explain that in the end. 450,000 truck movements, 2,322 vessel movements, and 12 million metric tons commodities via pipeline. Foreign trade zone number 62. We're number 3 in the nation. Out of 193 free trade zones in the nation for value of exports, we're number 3. $7 billion in exported goods, $3.2 billion in imported goods, and out of the 193 FTZs in the nation for the value of imports. Port of Brownsville is a grantee and administrator of the Foreign Trade Zone number 62, one of the largest FTZs in Texas. FTZ number 62 offers sites at the port throughout Cameron County zone. Status is available at any port properties. So if you have an ideal of bringing your business down there, you can apply for FTZ status. Powering the Texas economy. Every 4 or 5 years, the Texas Port Association conducts an economic overview of what ports provide to the state of Texas. So this year in 2023, actually we got it in 2024, but we've got some good numbers here. $12 billion in total economic activity for fiscal year 2023, $876 million in direct business revenue, and $10.4 billion statewide economic output. Driving the economy through job creation. In Texas, the Port of Brownsville has created 66,212 jobs. In the Rio Grande Valley, 10,000. That's growing every day. That is growing very fast every day. It's a good thing. $733 million to local economic boost in fiscal year 2023. I can tell you that's going up quite a bit. Next decade, the last time I looked at their spending out there. Now remember, this is an $18.5 billion project. Just the terminal itself, the LNG terminal. Now you remember, you got $3 billion coming in for the pipeline too. But last time I looked, we were over $200 million to local vendors, trucking companies. These are local businesses that are taking advantage of this economic phenomenon that's going on right now. Texas made, Brownsville built. Shipbuilding, Seatrium Amphels. I see we have somebody here from Seatrium today. Definitely proud of our Seatrium Amphels. The only major Jones Act shipbuilding yard in Texas. Built and delivered 2 774-foot-long container ships to Pashawa, Hawaii. Building the largest hopper dredge in the U.S. and building the first Jones Act compliant offshore wind turbine installation vessel. Very proud of what's going on in the Port of Brownsville right now. We're shipbuilding. What's the big buzz out there right now? Big buzz is what? We need to start shipbuilding in the United States. Well, we're proud to say that we have a company that's already been doing it, and they do a hell of a job there at the Port of Brownsville. Ship recycling. And I'll always say this, and everywhere I go, the ship recycling is really one of my favorite parts of the port. When you go to the port, capturing over 85% of the nation's ship recycling business, where U.S. Navy, Marriott, and commercial ships berthed for the last time. The port has earned the reputation of being the final berth place for U.S. Navy aircraft carriers and other retired warships. Since 2014, 6 aircraft carriers have been recycled at the port. Port of Brownsville is the first and only site in the U.S. to gain accreditation from the European Union to recycle their ships. To gain accreditation from the European Union is not easy, folks. So this is a very unique asset that we have at the Port of Brownsville. Now, I say, it's my favorite watching them is because when you watch them bring in a ship and you see the amount of work and how they do it and the process, there's so much time and there's so much time and consideration on how they organize the tearing down of a ship. They just finished the Kitty Hawk, which was about a year ago. Okay, the Kitty Hawk was here for about 2 years. So to take an aircraft carrier that size and then break it down and recycle that and put that back into the system in 2 years is just magnificent. Right now, we have the USS John F. Kennedy there right now. And every day I drive by it because you could look at it and see another part's been taken off. So it's a very efficient, provides a lot of jobs to the local community. And what's interesting about shipbreaking, and I was reading about this, is it tends to be stable no matter what the economic situation is. The economic situation can be up, down, but it's kind of a steady line. So in other words, I guess there's enough ships out there to break, and I guess there's enough profit in it to do it. So yeah, it stands the test of time, and shipbreaking will be here for a long time. Cross-border trade with Mexico. Top trading partner. About 90% of total commodities arriving at the Port of Brownsville by ship. Brownsville shipped to Mexico, including steel, petroleum-based products, aggregate minerals, and agricultural products. Now, you got a lot of business people here. What's the problem with that? And I like people to point out problems. We're just a throughput. That's it. We're just a throughput. All we're doing at that point is bringing commodity in and shipping it over. Who's adding the value to that product? The manufacturing end. That's where the fundamental change is coming in the Port of Brownsville. What we're looking at right now in the Port of Brownsville is your industry must have added value. For example, if you're going to bring in steel and then send it off somewhere else to have the car built, that's going to come back and give profit to so many other people in the supply chain. We've lost at that point. Because all we're doing is bringing it in. It's a very short time. The stevedores make a little bit of money. Storage makes a little bit. Other than that, all the money is going somewhere else. So what we're doing right now is we're highly focused on making sure that we have an industry that adds value to the product. Okay, add value to the product. Just the simple concept of you can bring avocados all day long, but until you make a guacamole, it's not worth a whole lot. You know what I mean? So once you make a guacamole, now it's $5 in comparison to 10 cents. An avocado. I don't know if they're 10 cents. I haven't been shopping in a long time, but nevertheless, that concept here. So when we come in and you come in as an industry and you can be tier 1, tier 2, what is the added value? Why is added value so important? Where does that money stay when there's added value? A lot of it, we capture it here. Okay. We will always have the throughput aspect of the Port of Brownsville, but I like to see that throughput instead of 90% going to supply Mexican industry. I like to see it to come in and supply our own industry at the port, and we value add at every single level all the way up until we ship it out and they get the money from someone else to pay for it. That's where you're going to start seeing a big change right there in the economic demographic of the region right there. Petroleum-based products. Port is one of the largest exporters of refined petroleum products to Mexico and currently expanding its liquid storage capacity to meet the growing demand. Wind energy. Among the leading U.S. ports capable of receiving, storing massive components for wind energy industry, including largest windmill blades, imported to the U.S. at 267 feet long. These components are transported by truck, rail, barge, and ocean-going vessels. And just get ahead of the questions here on this. Are we going to probably see some change in this? We could. But the current projects that we're working on right now, these projects have already been established. They are already moving. And it looks like for the next 8 years that will be okay because they have to finish these products. Now, how does that look down the road? Very muddy right now. We don't know. We don't know if wind energy is going to be a high priority of the national government or worldwide. Like I said, things are changing very fast. If you would have asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, oh, yeah, this is going to be here forever. But I think we all know what's going on right now. There's a lot of changes. And maybe wind energy might not be on the top priority for the nation. Steel products. Among the top U.S. steel imports, moving more steel into Mexico than any other domestic competitor, more than 5.5 million metric tons in 2024. Throughput of steel and other metals will increase more than 9 million tons by 2026. Now, when this PowerPoint was written, that was real. 9 million tons by 2026. Will that happen by 2026? I'm optimistic. Yeah, we'll get closer to that number. But right now, tariffs and what's going on in the world right now, we have seen a reduction in imported steel coming into the Port of Brownsville. Why? Manufacturers are not ordering it right now. Why? Because it's really the end product that gets the tariff. When the car is built in Mexico and it's coming to the United States, that's where the tariff starts hitting in. So even in the feedstock aspect of it, it's already slowed down. Okay. The feedstock coming in to supply the major manufacturing facilities has already slowed down. Now, the word tariffs, not to get political in any way, it just depends on who you ask. I could sit at one table one night and people say it's the greatest thing ever. And I could sit at the next one and someone said, no, this is horrible. It just all depends on where you are in the logistics chain and what your business is. So, not getting into a big tariff discussion here. Current projects. As Rick said, I wish I could tell you everything I knew. Sounds like a CIA thing, right? That's pretty cool, right? But the reason why I can't tell you everything I know is we're under very strict NDAs. But as we move forward, I think within the next year, the news will be coming out. We're coming down to, I would say, the last quarter of negotiations and for the final decisions to be made for industries coming to Brownsville, around Brownsville to Rio Grande Valley. And when I say Brownsville, it's not an arrogant thing. It's just that's where I live, and the port's in Brownsville, but I mean the Rio Grande Valley. And believe it or not, when you start seeing the trucks coming in from all over the place to work on next decade or a new project, I can tell you a lot of the companies are coming from McAllen, Westlaco, and that area up here. So this is good for all of us. Current projects. Okay, channel deepening. Brazos Island Harbor channel deepening project will deepen the channel from 42 to 52 feet. That right there is an amazing feat right there. So when you're looking at that 17-mile long channel, they're actually digging it 10 feet deeper. Okay, for 12, 15, 16 years, I think it's been 16, some say 20, they've been working on this project to get it ready and get it done. Now, how was this project funded? It was very interesting. It is one of the most unique projects in how it was funded in the history of the Corps of Engineers. The history of Corps of Engineers, and taking that into consideration, what they have said is this will be the model for the rest of the country as we look at large infrastructure projects for the rest of the country. So Rio Grande Valley, Brownsville, our WIT has actually excited people across the country. When you look at it, this is going to be about a $600 million project. Okay, $400 million of this project was funded by Next Decade, the private partner. Private partner came in and said, we're going to pay $400 million. It's the lion's share of this whole project. Port of Brownsville, we have invested about 71 so far, but that's going to increase. And the Corps of Engineers has spent $68 million. So this is a great example of private-public partnership in action. Okay, private-public partnership, as you guys are hearing, that term, it's P3s, P3s, P3s. As we start looking for grant allocations in the future, how we look at how we're going to do projects in the future, P3 models are going to become more and more pushed on us, and understanding how P3s work is going to be very important for all of us. The days of asking the federal government saying, hey, we got this project, we need $600 million, and them coming saying, yeah, we're going to give it to you at a 20% match, I think that them are going to be few and far between. So the P3 is the way we did this one here, and it's touted at the Corps of Engineers as being one of the most innovative ways of financing a project like this. Phase 1 began in 2023. Great Lakes Dredge Company Corps continues to work on Brownsville Ship Channel for Next Decade's part of the agreement. Now, along with that, if you look at these areas here, Now, the fun part is actually watching the dredge in the channel. Here's the not so fun part is watching these areas being built. No, I think they're pretty cool, but if I wanted to take you out there and look at it, you'd probably say, what did you bring me to? They're high levees with a void in the middle. And what these are is when that dredge material, when the spoils from the dredge come out, they have to go back in there. And if you never worked around ports, you think, hey, I just thought you just threw that stuff on the side and made hills. No, it's actually a science behind it. You have to put the dredge material in there. It has to settle properly. And as it goes back into the channel, it's been cleaned out. If not, it'll end up back in the channel. Then you'll have shoaling. So it's a longer process building these DMPAs than it is to actually do the dredge itself. Phase 2 is underway. U.S. Army contract to Cal Allen Marine, August 24, project to be completed in 2026. And we're on schedule. So by the end of 2026, we're going to have a 52-foot long channel. So that's great. What does more draft mean? Larger vessels, right? Larger vessels. If you can say, for example, if you're bringing in 45,000 metric tons now, but then as soon as we get the channel complete, you can bring in 75 million metric tons. You're getting more bang for your buck. The shipping cost on bringing commodity to a port is very high. That's one of their highest expenses. So if we can lower that, that'll give us preferences as being the port of choice.
The jackups for the repairs, that'll help us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
We draft all the jackups and off the semi.
Absolutely.
For repairs.
That's right. Yeah. And some of the companies are already looking at this, taking advantage, and the forecasting on the benefits of the dredge are pretty interesting when you sit down and look at it. We just completed our 118-acre shovel-ready business park, ideal for nearshoring, reshoring ventures. We talked about them hybriding companies where they might want to come down and build some sort of finishing facility. It's 118 acres. New industrial project leverages port's logistical advantages to support manufacturing companies and industry clusters. Development provides dynamic ecosystem for companies to collaborate, innovate, and flourish. If you look at this here on our first companies here, actually it is our first company is Westa, thanks to CoStep. CoStep brought them to us. This is a Turkish manufacturer that'll be milling flour and, is it sunflower oil? Sunflower oil. Now, to go into this a little bit, and then we talk about the good side and bad side of tariffs, okay? Now, I'm not talking about this company specifically. I'm talking about a group of companies that are dealing with this challenge right now. And because I don't want to name a company, but when they come in and they say, hey, we're going to make a big investment into the Port of Brownsville. Okay, that's great. They pretty much know how much this is going to cost. But then when you have to fill that facility with the intricate machinery and a lot of the things that are not, that can be high price here, they outsource that. So one of the companies, and just tell you what they've went through without naming who they are, is they'd already had it set up to be built in China. Okay? Well, then tariffs came in. Well, no, let me go to India. Well, no, tariffs are coming in. So now what they've had to do is reduce the scope of their project or find someone in the United States to be able to do it. So it is slowing down. It is slowing down some of these projects right now. Now, how do we look at that? Well, it depends on which table you sit at. So it is slowing down. So large industry wanting to come in, for example, if some of that equipment is needed for them to facilitate their manufacturing process, a lot of this machinery does come from overseas, and it'll have an effect on, the pricing of it when you're looking at tariffs. So it is slowing down in that way. Westa Incorporated, pioneer in food manufacturing, cutting-edge complex in Port of Brownsville. The state-of-the-art facility includes high-capacity flour mill, sunflower processing plant. $20 million investment, 120 new jobs. This is a really neat company that's going to take advantage of the maritime component. The maritime component, for you to be that close to bringing in your feedstock and to be able to export your product, it's a plus. So we're very happy to have Westa at the Port of Brownsville and hope they get moving soon, building, and let's get that going. Ternium Pesqueria operation located outside Monterrey. Company utilizes port receiving, staging, and shipping all steel slab process at its state-of-the-art plant. Any of you been to the Pesqueria plant? Yeah, it's something else. When you go in there and you watch the process and, the advanced manufacturing in action, you see this big steel plant. And you see maybe 2 people on the floor, but everything's automated. You got about 10 guys up in a room with a control panel and joysticks working this whole thing. So, yeah, Ternium is one of our proud customers at the Port of Brownsville. Last year, they brought in 4.9 million metric tons of steel. And I think in the next couple of years, they're going to be keeping that, along with bringing 3 to 4 million more in feedstock, which would be iron ore and scrap metal. Forza Steel. We just had a tour of Forza Steel yesterday. They're almost there. That initial investment of $85 million is probably about $120 million right now. 150 direct jobs they have already hired. They already have 60 people working on that site. Structural steel fabricator manufacturing pipes, tubes for the automotive, construction, and oil and gas industries. This is one of them hybrid companies. It's a company out of Monterrey that said, hey, we want to take advantage of being on the other side. And so they built a facility just right off Highway 48. Texas A&M Advanced Manufacturing Training Facility for Technical Workforce Careers at Port of Brownsville is currently under construction. When I mean currently, they have broken ground. They're already out there. They're already doing the groundwork right now. $30 million investment. And we leased the A&M 22 acres on a 100-year lease. It's pretty much in perpetuity. Workforce development. When we start talking about workforce development and we start talking about advanced manufacturing, the biggest question out there is, how do we beat China? How do we beat our competitors? How do we beat everybody else around us? And someone says, well, are we going to put iPhones together, line 100 people up in it? No, that's not what we're going to do. The only way we're going to beat China and the rest of the world is we're going to have to get really deep into our advanced manufacturing concepts. Okay, with that in mind, Texas A&M will be able to bring in the technical trainers to be able to train the workforce for the industry that's coming in. I can give you some examples of some of the industry that's wanting to come into Brownsville that we're almost at that point of saying, yes, they're going to be here, and we have that press release. They're depending a lot on Texas A&M on what they're going to be able to bring. When you're looking at hydraulics, mechatronics, AI components, the world's changing very fast, robotics, and to be able to train our local workforce and to be able to work on that. What is that? Them are higher paying jobs. Okay, higher paying jobs for the region. So we're very proud and very happy to say that we have Texas A&M at the Port of Brownsville. LNG project, Rio Grande LNG. We've already talked about that a little bit. $18.5 billion project. Altogether, $23 billion when you include the pipeline that's coming in from the Permian Basin. So this is a huge project, not so much money, but if you look at the size, if you go out there and you look at the engineering and everything that's going on out there, it's unbelievable. From my understanding, it's the largest greenfield project in the state of Texas. And I think it was a little while for also the United States. So this is magnificent. When you're looking at this type of operation coming to the Port of Brownsville, what does that do? What do you mean? We know we're going to have the jobs. We know we're going to have more traffic. We're going to have the good and bad. But what does this do? Put it this way. Let's put it on a national scale. Let's wrap our head around that. Right now, with what happened in Ukraine 2 years ago, when the Red Army went in, or the Russians went into Ukraine, Europe, what did they do? The Nord Stream pipeline, however that got busted. So the gas supply to Europe got cut off. Now, who's going to be able to fill that void in the future? And who's filling it right now? The United States. That provides the United States geopolitical power that we did not have. We're looking at Asian markets, okay? So to be able to have a facility that's going to be able to produce 27 million metric tons of LNG to be able to provide our friend nations out there who are struggling because of conflicts that are going on in Europe, or who knows, in the next 4, 5, 10 years, whatever happens in Asia, gives us a better stance geopolitically. Now, what's very interesting about that is when you start seeing that the United States starts building plants like this and starts getting into heavy infrastructure projects to where we can fill these voids around the world, that changes the threat mechanism quite a bit. You know, terrorism for the past 25 years has been the number one threat to the United States, right? Well, it's not number one anymore. Now what you're looking at is nation state aggression. China, Iran, North Korea, attacking infrastructure, making sure that we don't succeed in things like this. Now, we've not seen anything directly as it pertains to this here, but there's no doubt that what it does is it puts Brownsville and the Rio Grande Valley on the map as being big contributors to the United States, to the U.S. policy. Glenfair Energy, Texas LNG, that's what we call the baby LNG next to it. It's a $3 billion, probably $4 billion job. They'll be producing about 4 to 5 million metric tons a year of LNG. Next decade, Rio Grande, 18.4, 18.5, 5,000 plus jobs. During construction, they're at 4,000 right now. They'll be ramping up to about 5,500 next year. So that job's there. The 300 permanent jobs has went up to 400. So this is good. This is great for the Rio Grande Valley. And sitting down with Next Decade and getting a better understanding of this project and their partner Bechtel, there were some very neat compliments that came out of. Usually when you're dealing with tier one or any organization, there's always complaints, right? It's usually what I do. Not too many times a day do I get a call that says, hey man, I just love life. Everything's great. A lot of it is, hey, can we do this? Can we do this better? Can we do this better? But very unique here. And it was a dinner conversation we had, and a snippet of this conversation. They're so satisfied with the talent of the local workforce. And there was one specific example that was given, and they were talking about industry standards as it relates to welds. In the industry standard, 3%, there's a 3% failure rate in the sense of these welds have to be done over again. They can accept that, and they believe that that's, hey, we'll inspect them. 3% have to be rewelded. Well, at this site right now, less than 1% have to be rewelded. They said that the welders and what the Rio Grande Valley has produced in workforce has been unbelievable, and they quoted it as the most successful project in Bechtel history. So, hands off to all our people in the valley. This is great. Opportunities, nearshoring, advanced manufacturing, added value industries. I can't harp on that enough. Added value industries. Let's not take the port and let's not make it into another throughput process for somebody else to make the money. Let's keep the money here in the Rio Grande Valley. Construction support, cold chill storage warehousing. We don't have it right now, but I know there's somebody here from Harlingen that I might have to have a talk with right now. We could look at setting up a maritime highway between Quintana Roo and the Port of Brownsville. What's going on right now down there is they're having a hard time supplying the vacation industry, the cruise industry. This has been brought up to us, but the problem is we don't have the cold storage facilities at the port. So for what I'm hearing is Harlingen's going to come in and invest in the port and do that, right? Yeah. We're always trying to sell something. But we can create a maritime highway, where goods from the valley can go down there back and forth. And to be able to do that through the Port of Brownsville would be magnificent. Aerospace clusters, energy sector, container and reefer terminal opportunities. Currently, more than 20 billion, we're up to 30 billion right now. More than 20 billion in projects are in the pipeline, promising the further transportation and economic landscape of South Texas. Reason why I could say about a month and a half ago, that was 20 billion. It's 30 billion now. They're coming in pretty strong. These are tier one, tier two industries. These are not everybody's coming from Mexico. Asian, European markets are coming in, and they're wanting to set up shop in advanced manufacturing, heavy industry at the Port of Brownsville. So with that in mind, I think the future looks good for all of us. And remember, the Port of Brownsville is the Valley's port. And is there any questions I can ask of you today that you want to ask today? There's got to be a question. I didn't do that good.
So the dredging is going to be completed by next year.
Yes, sir. Yes.
We have to get our site done.
See, we're going to get you all squared away.
Yeah, it's the first time I heard that.
Yeah, you remember it was phase 1, phase 2, but they were done in unison. So yeah, they're going to be done. We're looking at 16 months more or less. So
Seriously, we've lost business because we couldn't bring in huge semis to come back to Brownsville for repairs, recertification,
yeah, we'll line them up. It's coming. You're ready to go. So, yes, sir.
William, how do you square this one? And that last figure you just gave, incredible. There's 20 billion, or really it's 30 billion. There's 30 billion coming. Yet earlier in your presentation, we were saying how, because of the current climate, you're expecting a little bit less work here, a little bit less work there.
It's a very good question. When I'm talking about a little bit less work here, what I'm talking about is the current industries that are bringing in the break bulk, which is the feedstock for the industry in Mexico. Okay, at Mexico or anywhere else in the country. Where I'm seeing that little drop there is the feedstock coming in to the break bulk of it, the steel, the aluminum, and all that coming in that's used in the manufacturing in Mexico right now. So on that end, you're seeing a lot, but I guess every cloud has a silver lining. And we know that cloud will dissipate soon once this tariff situation is taken care of. But along with that, we're seeing opportunities for people wanting to come in and manufacture in the United States, essentially the Port of Brownsville, to avoid any further situations where a tariff scare like this would interrupt their business and interrupt global markets. So on one end, yeah, I guess you could say you suffer a little bit for something else, but I think it'll all equal out later.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Dietrich, the figure for the amount of business of Port of Brownsville was 18 million in 1923.
I'll be darned.
2023, and suddenly grew 10 million after you made corporate anchor. What did you do?
Well, I tell you what, I'm a very lucky man. That's all I got to say is, no, I have a great staff. You know what? How does someone come into a port and run a world-class port? You have smart people working around you. I have very smart people. Our economic development team, our entire staff is just brilliant. We have a culture that when we come into the Port of Brownsville, economic success is celebrated every day, and that's all we talk about. Our topics are just that. So I think along with that, and I think a lot with just the region in general, I think we have to give more congratulations to the region on that number. The region has just really come out. Our economic development in the region has come full force, and I think that's really give them the credit to where that 10 million came in.
Keep questioning. Great presentation. On those 20 billion, I know there's also another investment through GMID, right, for the industrial part focused on space and energy. I think 500 billion on that one. Are there any specific joint efforts to bring, and I like that you mentioned the value added more manufacturing as well, and which is very close to the port. And any specific examples of that effort with GBIC's?
Well, I think GBIC, we work with GBIC. We have a great relationship with GBIC, but I think GBIC's industrial park, it is actually something totally separate from ours. Okay. Now, there's no doubt that if we had something, say, for example, didn't fit the business model of the Port of Brownsville, we definitely send it to GBIC. And we say, hey, this would be a good GBIC project because there's not much of a maritime component. And really what we want to do is when we lease land, and that's a good point you're making, 40,000 acres of land, not all that is usable land. And remember, there's wetland. There's a lot of wetland mitigation there. So as these parcels go, that opportunity, you got to make sure you maximize on that opportunity right there, because you're not going to be able to move that leasee out of the way or that tenant out of the way later and putting something in better. So with that in mind, the company that comes in and says, hey, I want 1,000 acres and I'm going to put 20 jobs or something, we're not doing that anymore. It has to be high impact, that better. But to say that on your question there is how do we work together?
I was just wondering if there's any specific joint efforts with this investment and also.
I think what there will be is what you're looking at is complementary industry. Okay, complementary industry is already starting to happen. And that's a good, I can answer that. But for example, a lot of the pipe fitting and a lot of things a lot of the manufacturers you see coming out of Houston, Corpus. But as we start having permanent situations here, they're starting to hybrid their offices down into the Valley region, where that could become a remnant. For example, GPIC, and I think one of the industrial parks that's got one of them air facilities right now. That's going to be working with SpaceX. So the complementary industry, definitely, and the complementary industry, remember that's going to be spread throughout the valley. So the complementary industry, whenever you see something that big, goes around the valley. It's a regional benefit.
Correct.